everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me once again is my colleague, Forbes staff writer Zach Everson. Zach, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on. Always good to talk about more congressional stock trades.
Yes, we had a similar conversation last week, which I do want to touch on later, but you're reporting that a member of Congress disclosed over 200 stock trades past the deadline that she was required to report them. And this Congresswoman is Julia Letlow. She's a Republican lawmaker from Louisiana. So I want you to start off the conversation by talking about these transactions. What was she trading? How big were those trades? And how late was she in disclosing them?
So by law, members of Congress have to report their stock trades within 45 days. She reported 224 trades on Tuesday, 211 of which were past 40, were done before 45 days. So that's 211 that were appear to have violated the Stock Act. Several of those were actually as far back as 2024. Almost all of these trades were for just between like $1,000 and $15,000. Congressmen don't have to report their actual amount of trades. They just have to report them in kind of broad ranges. And so we just have those little figures to look at. In terms of the stocks that were traded, a lot of big names that you'd be used to: Amazon, Apple, Procter & Gamble. There were some healthcare and pharmaceutical companies as well, which is particularly interesting as the representative is on a committee that has some jurisdiction over Food and Drug Administration.
I want to talk about that because obviously the bipartisan push to ban congressional stock trading all has to do with ethical concerns here. And when you look at what committees she sits on in particular, and you look at these transactions, do you see any of these trades potentially aligning with anything that's relevant to her work?
You know, I didn't actually look at that. There were 224 trades to go back here. It wasn't a ton of money, so it seemed like it wouldn't have really mattered all that much one way or the other. And a lot of these stocks that were bought and sold within this period. So I really didn't look in that. That said, it is a bad look to have a lawmaker with oversight of FDA owning stocks in pharmaceuticals.
Members of Congress only have 45 days to disclose trades. She disclosed over 200 of them late. What's the punishment here?
$200 fine just for filing a late periodic transaction report. So not all that much. She could be referred or investigated by the Office of Congressional Conduct, which is a nonpartisan group of career government employees, or also by the bipartisan House Committee on Ethics, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats on that. If anything happens investigation-wise, she's probably not going to be sanctioned. The House Committee on Ethics a few years ago just dismissed charges against 3 lawmakers for these same accusations of missing the Stock Act. There was no doubt that they did it. The lawmakers just said, oh, we didn't know the rules. We didn't have a system set up. We're going to do it right now. And the committee just let it go.
And what has Letlow said? Has she said something similar? Oh, I didn't know the rules. I mean, what really has her response looked like?
So this one was a rationale we've seen previously. It wasn't not knowing the rules, but it was that somebody else was managing her account. Now, what her spokesperson, Matt Smith, told me was that she doesn't actively manage this account. It was held in a brokerage, and then they had even offloaded that to a third party, to, I guess at this point, a fourth party to go ahead and manage. That other group changed her strategy. Previously, it was investing her in ETFs and mutual funds, which lawmakers typically do not have to report. In this instance, they switched it to stocks and bonds, not realizing that that would trigger an additional reporting requirement for their congressperson. She supposedly learned of this back when she was in August, when she was working on finalizing her financial disclosure for 2024. She was looking through stuff and saw, oh, there's a whole bunch of stocks and bonds that I own. I did not know that. I need to go ahead and report that.
Today, we're talking about transactions that were reported past the deadline. Last week, we talked about really big transactions. We talked about 6 members of Congress who disclosed stock transactions worth more than $1 million last year. There has long been a push to ban congressional stock trading. But as of now, what are the rules?
The rules are basically they can trade. You know, they're not supposed to do anything that would be a conflict of interest. They have to report within 45 days of any transactions. There are annual financial disclosures that are due in May. They can get extensions to August. A lot of them just do that, in which case they have to report their assets, those of their spouse, and also any dependent children. But they are really open to buy and sell as they see fit. and that is, considered problematic for a lot of people. So we've got these acts that the Senate and the House are looking at that would ban ban members of Congress for owning and trading stocks, as well as their spouse and dependent children.
To that point, and as we've said in this conversation and other conversations, there are a lot of ethical concerns. Lawmakers of both parties trade stocks, but there's bipartisan calls from both sides of the aisles to ban lawmakers from doing it. Talk to us about that legislation a little bit more. It's been introduced. Is it going anywhere? What does that look like?
Yeah, it seems like it gets introduced every Congress. In each Congress, it progressively seems like it has a little more energy behind it. This one, it seems like there might be enough to actually pass it. So you've got the Restore Trust in Congress Act that was introduced by Chip Roy, Republican of Texas, and Seth Magaziner, a Democrat of Rhode Island in the House, has 125 co-sponsors. It was introduced in the Senate yesterday by Kristen Gillibrand and Ashley Moody. So you've got bipartisan support pushing this through. Josh Hawley and Gary Peters, another bipartisan team, have another act in the Senate. And then Anna Paulina Luna's taking this. She's got a discharge petition to try to get the House to vote on a resolution she has that would ban members from trading stocks as well. So there's a lot of energy behind it. Typically it seems like lawmakers have been reluctant to do it because it's a good way to make money, having stocks. And not saying doing anything illicit, but, in terms of saving for a house, retirement, your kid's college, like sticking your congressional salary in a savings account or a CD isn't necessarily a great way to do it. They could certainly go through a mutual fund and ETFs, but there has been some reluctance on it. It's typically something you hear a lot of challengers making a big campaign issue out of, and then often when they get to Congress, they're fine with trading stocks.
What about members of Congress? I mean, why do they need this money? What does their income look like here? Are they exactly squeezed for cash?
A lot of them aren't wealthy. There are certainly several who are very wealthy, but the salary's $177,000. It hasn't gone up in years. So adjusting for inflation is going down. They have to, they live in their home district. A lot of them, they have to have someplace to sleep in D.C., so it can be expensive in that regard. And again, if you have a house, retirement, college, investing is a great way to try to make some money there out of it. So, I don't know if this flat out works. I talked to one member of Congress who pointed out that there are problems with one of these bills, and that if it required them to sell all their stocks, some of these members of Congress can't sell their stocks because there was something they acquired in a deal, maybe selling a business, and in exchange they got some stocks, but they have to hold on to them for a certain period of time. Other ones may incur a massive capital gains tax that they from selling the stocks. Other ones could take a loss. If they bought the stocks and it's way down, they're not going to have time to recoup the loss on that matter. So, it's interesting they're pursuing a stock act in other ways of banning Congress people from buying stocks. But I think we're going to continue to hear about this story in future Congresses. If these bills were to pass, they would probably need to be tweaked.
I know there's this renewed energy, as we talked about, from members of Congress to ban congressional stock trading. I'm curious if Letlow's energy is behind this. Does she support any of this legislation?
Her spokesperson told me she supports the idea, but she's not behind any of these specific bills yet. So not really sure what that means. I mean, there are good reasons not to necessarily back those bills, but didn't give me any explanation why she wasn't backing any of them yet.
Zach, per usual, always appreciate the conversations. Thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure. I'm sure we'll have more stock trades to talk about soon.